This is The Chris Heasley Show, coming to you from Radio DeBang, the North America's premier broadcasting network.
Hey, this is Chris Heasley with The Chris Heasley Radio Show, and we have an incredible show tonight. On tonight's show, we have two men in our studio who have served our country. They are military veterans who are now making a move to serve the country in another capacity. They're Texans, and they're both congressional candidates. It's going to be an incredible show. I really look forward to getting the state of world affairs from these two military men's perspective, men that have traveled the globe and have a very unique perspective on things. Looking forward to it. In the studio tonight, we have Nick Tran, congressional candidate for CD9, Congressional District 9. Is that correct?
CD8.
Goodness, man, I got it wrong.
We did this last time.
Yeah, right. I know, I do it every time. Oh, well. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great.
Good.
Thanks for having me again.
Glad to have you back. Well, hey, we broke the ice with my mistake there. So, and we also have Barrett McNabb, congressional candidate for CD13, Congressional District 13.
We're going to correct you again, CD38, to replace Wesley Hunt.
Oh, he put 13 on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Can we get that changed on the screen to CD38?
CD38.
CD8 is good for me.
So the show's going off with a bang. You're replacing again who?
Wesley Hunt. Wesley Hunt
Okay.
decided not to rerun for his congressional seat, and he decided to run for the U.S. Senate to primary John Cornyn and Ken Paxton.
Okay. And how's your race looking?
I think we're doing great. We just had a candidate forum. By all accounts, I crushed it. It was a great experience. And I think the fact that I was having a lot of fun and was able to showcase and highlight some of the skills and the knowledge and the breadth of geopolitics that I have really set myself apart. 3 of the candidates called me the very next day that were on the stage with me to let me know if I wasn't aware that I won. And so it was a great experience. I know a lot of people that were supporters of some of the candidates that were on the stage came up to me and said that they've changed their vote. So that the forum process works. Thanks to Glorious Way Church for hosting that. It was a great event, and I'm out there having fun. Can I just tell you a quick story?
Yeah, please go.
So I was at the Menudo Club, and I had given one of my very first political speeches, and I was at the tail end, and I said I was going to be the last person to leave the event, and so I was. I will answer any questions and stay for as long as people want. And I was talking to this woman named Ruth, and I got to be talking about my policy positions, and I asked her for her vote, and she started crying. And I said, man, I've got to work on that delivery because that's not the reaction that I thought I was going to get. But she started crying, and she cleaned herself up and apologized. And she said, the reason I'm crying is nobody has ever asked me for my vote before. People have sent me postcards. People have sent me text messages. People have sent me Facebook messages. But nobody has ever actually shaken my hand, looked me in the eye, and asked me for my vote before. And that was very powerful for her. And so I said, well, do I have your vote? And she said, yes. And I said, can I use your name in the story? And she said yes as well. But that's one of the things that's really cool about doing this is I feel as though I'm a better citizen for having run for Congress. I feel as though I'm a better American. Not that I'm a better person than anybody else. I just internally feel that I am engaged in civics and discourse and part of the solution.
Very
Yeah,
good.
I totally agree.
Excellent.
It's like an extension of our service to our country. We spent most of our lives holding true to our oath of fighting against our enemies abroad, and now seeing our country getting destroyed from within. So we're stepping up to make sure that we also handle those enemies within.
Right. You've already made a considerable contribution to the country, and it would possibly all go to waste if you two gentlemen didn't take this next step and try to close the deal and set our country right. These are perilous times, and it's really important. I always think about this. What if George Washington just said, I'm going to sit this one out? Where would we be today? But because George Washington said, no, this has to happen. I have to do my duty. We're sitting here in a free land. And so absolutely, I agree with both of you men that it's truly important to step up and get in the game and serve your country in this additional capacity. Very good.
Absolutely.
Barrett, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am not a native Texan, but I got here as quick as I could. I moved here in 1986.
From where?
From Indiana, Indianapolis, Indiana. And so again, I got here as quick as I could, and I feel as though I'm definitely a Texan. So I went to middle school here, high school here. Went to Sam Houston State University. Had a degree in criminal justice with a specialization in law enforcement, and I was in the ROTC program there. And it's kind of a funny story. I actually got in the ROTC program by accident. In between summers, I signed up for what I thought was a business class, leadership and management techniques. And it was, I showed up the first day of class, and the instructor comes in wearing camouflage and has a flat top. And I was not the only one that had made that mistake, because people were looking around like, what's going on here? And the instructor said, welcome to Leadership and Management Techniques, Military Science 101, ROTC. And it was love at first sight. I mean, I really enjoyed getting after small infantry tactics. Wound up getting into an organization in ROTC called Ranger Company. Got commissioned as a second lieutenant in the infantry, and as a brand new second lieutenant, graduating the infantry officer basic course, headed out to South Korea and was an air assault rifle platoon leader. So first job out of college, 40 men under my command, $750,000 worth of equipment assigned to me, and on the DMZ between North and South Korea. And that's where I was when 9/11 happened, or for me, because of the international date line, 9/12, and our country was at war. And so I volunteered to go to the 82nd Airborne Division because I knew they were going to get into the fight, and that's what I wanted to do. I was part of the initial invasion into Iraq in 2003. There was a brand new weapon system that we're all pretty familiar with now, but it was, the Army had not purchased it at the time. It was the HIMARS system, which is the mobile missile system that we've given to Ukraine, and they've used to great effect. But at the time, the Army hadn't purchased it yet. And so the mission was for the 75th Ranger Regiment to escort a battery of HIMARS behind enemy lines and infiltrate them into Iraq, and then have them fire missiles in support of 3rd Infantry Division as they were making their way into Baghdad. So we were with Joint Special Operations Command. So it was the Task Force Blue, the Navy SEALs, Task Force Green, the Army Green Berets, Task Force Red, the 75th Ranger Regiment, Delta Force was there, CIA Direct Action. And so we actually were led to the board. At the time, I was a heavy weapons anti-tank executive officer, so second in command of a heavy weapons company. And we were led white light by the CIA and these guys were not James Brosnan. These are dumpy old white guys, but led to the border by the CIA, white light. We were in night vision with blackout, following them. They paid the Saudi customs facility $250,000 each to look to the west for approximately an hour. And then we had F-16s and Tomahawk missiles that were fired from the Red Sea obliterate the Iraqi customs facility, and we were able to infiltrate the country that way. And we had a great time out there. We were utilized perfectly well in support of 3rd Infantry Division as they were making those movements up to Baghdad. We were behind enemy lines for about 2 weeks, came back, and then got reattached back to the rest of the brigade of the 82nd Airborne. And we fought in El Samoa, Diwania, Ramadi, Habaniya, and wound up in southern Baghdad.
Were you infantry?
I was an infantry officer, yes.
Infantry officer, so you're right in the front lines.
Right in the front lines.
Actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was Iraq.
That was Iraq. So that was in 2003. I was there for a year. Came back to Fort Bragg. A lot of people, after the high intensity conflict, didn't know what to do. And a lot of people, that fought in Iraq don't realize the transition time between the initial invasion. So I fought uniformed Iraqi soldiers, and about halfway through is when the army capitulated, and then it turned into the insurgency, and then fighting insurgents. So one of the few soldiers that actually fought uniformed army troops from the Saddam Hussein, and then got back to Fort Bragg, and some people were lost. They didn't know what to do, sitting at a desk, and so a lot of them got out. I stayed in and got orders to deploy to Afghanistan as a military advisor. So I went to Fort Riley for embedded tactical training in order to teach, coach, and mentor Afghan forces. And so that's what we were supposed to do is we were going to pull off an Afghan battalion in Daria. They call them a Kandak, so same troop level size. And we were going to pull them offline, and we were going to train them for 6 months, and then go out and let them loose on the battlefield. And being in Regional Command South, RC South, it was the hottest area that was in Afghanistan, and so there was no pulling anybody off the line. So we actually got embedded with 16 Americans, with 650 Afghan soldiers, and 8 fought with them. I like to think that I created a great rapport with them because we had different uniforms, which I thought was odd, but we had that horrible ACU gray camouflage, and the Afghan troops had BDUs, the old style BDUs. So there's a difference between the Afghan army and the embedded tactical trainers, and so the Taliban knew which ones they wanted to shoot at more because we see what the Americans look like. And so we would take fire a lot, and oftentimes I'd have Afghan soldiers throw themselves in front of me to be able to take hits. And I like to think that it was because of the rapport I built, but also I think it was also the fact that I had the embedder and the satellite to call in medevac, air support, field artillery, and things like that. They didn't want young Captain McNabb going down for the count at the time and lose that force multiplier that I was able to bring. But still, I had a great opportune time there. I got an email that asked me to choose what a functional designation. And I didn't know what that was, but luckily there was a major that was our team chief, and he said, well, that it's pretty important because it's what you're going to do for the rest of your time in the Army. And I said, well, that is pretty important. They should have given me a little bit more of a heads up than, hey, you've got 1 month to pick a functional designation. So I downloaded a PDF of the available choices. There's 42, something like that. And I had to pick 3, and I picked to be an Army astronaut. I was like, if we're throwing dice, let's see what we can get. And I thought that'd be pretty cool. Second was to pick to be a nuclear counterproliferation officer. So enforce SALT 1, SALT 2 treaties, observe concrete being poured into missile silos, and ultimately what I was selected for was to be a foreign area officer. And those are strategic scouts. They have language skills, they have cultural skills. And they get embedded in U.S. embassies overseas to provide military advice to the ambassador and to the State Department. And so I got to do a lot of great and cool things. I wasn't credentialed for covert collection, so the Defense Intelligence Agency did use me for overt collection and would go to various arms shows and take photographs of adversarial equipment, things like that. The IDEX comes to mind, and that's in Abu Dhabi. It's the world's second largest arms show, and so a lot of cool. It's like if you're a 2A guy, it's like SHOT Show, but it's like for big stuff, and so it's a great event.
SHOT Show on steroids.
SHOT Show on steroids, absolutely. So. Got to do some of that. One of my pet projects was international money laundering. And so with the help of the State Department and my black diplomatic passport, the old get-out-of-jail-free card, diplomatic immunity, actually walked into banks in Beirut, Lebanon, and conducted banking interviews to track money from the Iranian Republican Guard through Lebanese banks into Hamas and Hezbollah, and got to write a white paper and turn that into the DIA. As I finished up my career, I was at U.S. Army Central Command, started as a country desk officer for UAE, Yemen, and Oman, and wound up retiring as the branch chief for the entire Arabian Peninsula and Levant. And it was a great military career, got to retire, and moved back down here to Houston, Texas.
You mean nostalgia?
It's an incredible story.
I appreciate it.
So I want to ask you two gentlemen, give me your opinion on the state of global affairs today.
Nick, you want to take this one?
Well, I love what recently happened in Venezuela, and I think it's sad that the left already is condemning it, but I don't think anybody on the left is talking to any people in Venezuela or the immigrants that escaped that dictatorship from Venezuela that's living here in the United States. I think it was a brilliant move. As long as we're not in the business of nation building, it is a very strategic move because Iran, China, and Russia had bases there. And that's not too far from our coast. It's like, what, 1,100, 1,400 miles away? You know, missiles can go very quickly and attacks can come from there. So a lot of people don't understand. They say things about Trump, they criticize him, but he's usually 2 or 3 moves ahead. He is playing 5D chess on that.
Okay, guys, 1 second. We're going to get back to that question, but I want to give a shout out to our featured product, which is the X39 patch. And what this patch is, it's photolight therapy that triggers a peptide. It triggers the copper peptide that stimulates your stem cells, that awakens your dormant stem cells. So when we're babies, we're flush with stem cells. They're abundant, they're overflowing, and then with each passing decade, our stem cells become dormant. Our stem cells are the source of youth, the source of vitality, and with each passing decade, they become dormant. That's why we have aches, pains, we grow old. And what we do is we tape over it with medicines and doctor visits and surgeries. But what this does is it's cracked the code on stem cell revitalization, waking up dormant stem cells. It's an incredible technology. It's the X39 patch. I have it right here. And what it does, it's photolight therapy that reflects light into your body. It triggers a peptide and then awakens your stem cells. And it begins to repair your internal organs. Clinical studies are done, and they confirm that this patch, with 6 months of use, will turn the age of your heart back by almost a decade. I'll repeat that again. By almost a decade. This isn't anti-aging. It's age reversing. It turns the age of your heart and your other internal organs backwards by almost a decade. And what that does on your externalities is a myriad of different things. It may make your hair grow back where there is none. It may make your hair return to its original color. It may make your skin look younger. It may give you more energy. It's all different things for different people, but overall, it is a healing agent that will improve the quality of your life. It's the X39 patch. Text the word Patriot to 330-606-2304, 330-606-2304 to receive the order link or to receive more information. Guys, okay, so what I really believe President Trump is doing is he's not doing it from a Venezuelan perspective. He's not doing it from a South American perspective. He's doing it from an American perspective. And what he's doing is he's securing this side of the world so that potential adversaries can be here no longer. The Russians should not be in Venezuela. The Chinese should not be in Venezuela. And I believe what President Trump is doing is ensuring that doesn't happen. What do you think, Barrett?
Yeah, so from the very get-go, I think just in the news articles that you're seeing right now is people talking about the Monroe Doctrine. And the very first thing when President Trump got China out of the Panama Canal, that's the very first thing that I thought of, is that we're starting to enforce the Monroe Doctrine again. And just for the viewing audience, if they don't know, so President Monroe wanted to make sure that colonial powers were not in the Western Hemisphere, and so we said, look, this is our backyard. We're going to make sure that we don't have European powers or Asian powers in there.
What year was that?
Gosh,
any idea?
It was at the tail end. I don't think it was the beginning of his administration.
But what year was this? Just in general, the year of his administration.
So
1880. Okay,
1880s. Yeah, I think.
Because I think one of the things that people don't realize is that during the Civil War, the British were on our northern border and the French were on our southern border, waiting for the command to go in and take out our country. And it was the Russians who came in and put their ships in our ports that stopped that. But we've always been a fragile country,
right?
We've just always not been aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that we've always had an advantage at the time, we didn't have as strong a navy as some of the other nations, but obviously since World War II, we have the world's strongest navy. Now, there's an argument to be made, and I think the U.S. Navy correctly makes it that while China has overtaken us with the amount of ships that they have holes in the water, we have more tonnage, and so our ships are more powerful. So it doesn't matter. I mean, there's always this argument that the Army has more boats than the Navy does if you count all of our Zodiac rafts and things like that. So the amount of boats is not as powerful as the amount of tonnage. But the fact that we now have these two great oceans that we've been able to take advantage of for a long period of time. Obviously, the nuclear triad has shortened that down because our adversaries have nuclear weapons and submarines and things like that. But still, I think we're able to mitigate that with some of our technology that we're making sure that we're getting from Israel with their Iron Dome and putting that into our Golden Dome to make sure that we have that missile defense shield. In fact, I read an article today that that Guam is getting advanced battalions of the Golden Dome to test out. So we'll see what happens. But Donald Trump from the very get-go has implemented or reinforced the Monroe Doctrine by making sure that we have access and permissions at a greater level than we have in the past with the Panama Canal, and with this action in Venezuela. Again, we're going to see the second and third order effects of reduced fighting age males coming into our country. You just have to make sure that people understand that it's not Mexicans that are necessarily coming into our country. It's fighting age males that are from China, that are from Iran, that are masquerading as Guatemalans coming over, or masquerading as Venezuelans. And so hopefully this will slow down, because it's not just border security, it's national security for all of the fighting age males that are unaccompanied that are here in this country.
Well, the cartels have, the equivalent of army divisions in cities like Chicago right now. So the border shut, that problem is already being rectified. What were we going to say, Nick?
Well, we're talking about state actors. There's a threat of non-state actors, of ISIS and Hamas, and all those that hated us because we fought in the GWAT for all these years, and they used the open borders as an opportunity to get in and develop cells. And that's, again, since the last time we talked, that was one of my concerns that keeps me up at night, is them planning an attack here in the United States, a coordinated attack all at once in multiple cities. So
let's talk about border. We jump around to all different subjects, but since we mentioned border, I had a conversation with an ICE agent, and he basically said that right now there's 5,000 ICE agents in the country for approximately 30 million illegal immigrants, that's out of whack. It's going to be tripled to 15,000 in a few months. But at the same time, when he presented that, that issue, the bigger problem is being solved because the border's sealed. And so the flow is cut off. Mm-hmm. And if you are here without citizenship, you're in a very difficult way, because at any point in time, it's a very difficult position for a lot of people because they've built relationships here, but laws are laws. But it's going to be whittled down, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that it was a brilliant move by the Trump administration to lift the age of ICE agents to come in. I mean, you had former military, you had retired law enforcement, and to have that incentive to come back, and they did it really smart too. A lot of people don't talk about this, that it's not that if you're 50 years old, you get to come in and then you can do a 20-year career. Like, going in that you only get 4 years to be an ICE agent at this elevated age. And so by being able to surge the manpower to get people out, I think is a really good thing. And again, it's not border security anymore, it's national security. We have got to make sure that we get these bad actors. It's funny, the Democrats in some of these sanctuary cities are protesting ICE and all of the criminal apprehensions that they're doing, and then ICE is showing the mugshots. Hey, look, we got 20 rapists. Hey, we got 20 people that were wanted for murder. Hey, look, we got people doing child pornography, and we got these people off the street, and that's not being acknowledged by the Democrat Party.
Of course not. You talked about that recent shooting with Renee Good. All the left is crying foul play, but they're celebrating when Charlie Kirk got murdered right in front of his children. And they're saying how Renee was mother of three. What they don't say is she lost two of her children, from custody,
Right.
and then she became a lesbian partner with her.
I think that we're really watching the country rectify in so many ways. Again, we see Maduro taken out, and let's talk about what Maduro, the threat that he was to America. He was sending cartel infantry into our country through the southern border, equipped with fentanyl and other threats to the country, weaponry, things of that sort. So he's taken out. Now we can get Venezuela back to a healing state and the border secured. I mean, it's really, it's hard. It's like all we see in the news is the controversy and people fighting it out. But the truth is, I believe that healing is happening.
Yeah. When you look at what America First is, and I think people, especially like Congressman Green, well, she's no longer a congressman anymore, but from what I understand, she's thinking about running for president. I think that'd be a mistake. But she's saying, look, we're
MGT.
not. Yeah,
we know her as
MGT.
MGT.
Yeah. So she's saying that we're not doing America First, and I would say that if we went into Venezuela and did a full invasion and did nation building, that's not America First. But going in and serving a warrant for a wanted drug trafficker and cartel and weapon trafficker, that is different. That is that's protecting our interests, and protecting our interest is America First.
The country is guilty of taking out sovereign nations that were peaceful because they didn't meet our political interests. That's one thing that should never happen. It's happened in our past. But this is not that case. This is a situation where there was a man who was hostile to our country and taking hostile actions to our country. So, yeah, I think that the action was necessary.
I mean, the Biden administration put a $50 million bounty on his head.
Right.
It's not that we started it. We just finished it.
And to your point, Nick,
Biden or Trump?
No, it was previous.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was
but,
Biden.
But one of the things, you look at Chuck Schumer, and during Trump's first administration, he criticized the Trump administration for not getting rid of Maduro, and now that we have, he's changed his tune and saying we shouldn't have done it. And the hypocrisy just knows no bounds, and it's it's just kind of laughable on how the Democrats are changing their tune. But the fact is that pushing China out, pushing Russia out, pushing Iran out of our hemisphere is America First.
Okay, I think that it is the Monroe Doctrine being put in place, and Trump setting the standard where we will control this side of the continent. All right, before I go to make my point, let's talk about Greenland. I see that as what did President Trump said? He said, if we don't take it, they're going to put Chinese and Russians there. And again, I don't see, it's not necessarily that I see them as adversaries, but what I'm saying is that they should not be in that space. And so
they're not capable of defending it.
So what I'm saying is that, yeah, I mean, I think it's justified to not let that landmass go to a foreign potential adversary.
So China has already declared itself, I want to say it was in 2010, they declared themselves an Arctic nation. The problem is China has no territory that borders the Arctic. So if they're declaring themselves, of their own words, to be an Arctic nation, what part of terrain are they going to take in order to be an Arctic nation?
Greenland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, one of the things is that why wouldn't they take it? The America's been a doormat for the past century. So, but when President Trump begins to make these bold moves, it sends a message of strength and it lessens the chance of war.
Yeah, I agree. The fact is, if you acquiesce and let weakness show, then people are going to take more and more. And if you draw a line in the sand and say, look, this is our territory, you need to get out, I think that shows strength, and that's what...
Did you hear about that operation? The operation to catch Maduro? From one of the soldiers on the ground on the Venezuelan side, they said when we came in, it was almost like we were an alien force. They used sonic weapons that made them nauseous, and his head was spinning. And we swing CAG in there, which is, most people know is Delta Force. Came with newly developed Black Hawk helicopters that were silent, stealth. We used UAVs, and we took out hundreds, and they were just overwhelmed. They were just devastated, and that put China and Russia and Iran on notice what we're capable of, and more importantly, that we're willing to do it, which is what was missing during the last administration.
Yeah, you got to give full credit to DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Weapons Research. They've been doing stuff with sonic weapons for quite some time. I remember even back in 2004, they were developing anti-crowd weapons, and this is kind of a funny story, but using low frequency sound in order to disrupt the bowels of protesters so that they would soil themselves and just lose all hope and go home. And so I'm surprised that hasn't been put out yet. But they've been doing sonics for quite some time.
So one of the questions that I think that this whole scenario presents is that, okay, so if the United States is going to sort of lay claim on this part of the world, Russia's going to argue that in their part of the world that they should have some domain. And to lend credence to that idea, I don't believe NATO is a defensive alliance. I think it is sort of like the bully of the establishment, the globalist establishment, to start wars on the European continent. I don't see NATO as, with this, I saw them as the hostile party towards Russia more than the other side of way around. So what I'm trying to say is that if Putin pushes back and says, okay, fine, but NATO has to basically become, pull the venom out of it. I think that's something that has to be considered. What do you guys think?
So I almost kind of want to go all the way back to Nostradamus. And, a lot of his predictions don't make any sense until they happen, right? And then you can go back and you can look at that stuff. One of the things that Nostradamus said is that there's going to be a great fight between three entities, and it's going to be the eagle and the bear defeat the dragon. And you can go ahead and pick which countries of those three could possibly get into an entanglement. And so we need to make sure that a unified bloc of Russia and China does not solidify. And because there's second and third order effects that are happening with that. We see a weakening of Iran, and Saudi Arabia is taking control of that power vacuum, and they are cozying up to Russia and China. And so we want to make sure that we don't have the firm establishment of the BRICS, which was a term that was initially coined by Goldman Sachs of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then adding
South
in the
Africa.
S, South Africa. And now there are about 20 countries that have joined that bloc. And one of their goals is to eliminate the U.S. dollar as the world currency. And so
backed by gold.
Backed by gold. And so it's trying to make it so we need to make sure that we don't allow those alliances to happen, because it's not in our best interest to do that.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to say is that what I see sovereign countries sort of populating everywhere, right? So I'm going to ask you, Barrett. Okay, if they form BRICS, I don't see. I sort of see the fact that the dollar is the global currency. It allows us to sort of be the welfare queen, because we can have these never-ending budgets and just print more dollars because the whole world's using them, while they're using a dollar that's feeding us. So when they push back and say, hey, we want our own currency, we want an alliance, I don't know how we can argue against that. Libya, Gaddafi, right? We were told that he was this lunatic madman, but what we're learning is that he was a nationalist, and he wanted things like, he did not want the U.S. dollar for his country. He didn't want the dependence on that globalist mechanism. So I don't know. That's what I sort of think about that. When I saw BRICS come along and push back against the dollar, I thought, where do we have any legitimacy to say you must use our currency?
Well, and that's excuse me. That's one of the things that having an interest in cryptocurrency is important. I attended CPAC in Washington D.C. in February, And there were a lot of great breakout sessions. Now, obviously, the highlight of the show was the president of Argentina giving Elon Musk the chainsaw, and that was about 20 feet away when we got there. That was a great time. But there were a lot of minor breakout sessions, and one of them was with Michael Saylor, who is I think the single largest shareholder of Bitcoin. And he was making an argument that we needed to take a dominant position of Bitcoin, to your point of if there are additional currencies that are coming out, that taking even a strategic position of 20% of all the 21 tokens of Bitcoin.
21 million.
Yeah, so 21 million, yeah, sorry. And so the problem is that we have is that quantum computing is on the verge, if not in the laboratory, of cracking the blockchain. And so that would mean that there are new technologies that need to come out. Nick and I actually had a conversation about this, and I think, Nick, what's the next generation crypto?
So I'm heavily invested in XRP.
XRP.
And right now it's quantum computer proof for now. But Bitcoin still remains the dominant leader. You talk about Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy's, his company. Did you get to see that Bitcoin movie I sent you? It explains a lot. There's a movie called the Bitcoin Movie. It's on YouTube. It's like an hour long. It explains everything about Bitcoin. And one of the things I'm going to do in my campaign is actually host a Bitcoin a presentation and get subject matter experts to talk about it, because Bitcoin is freedom. You have the ability to not have the government get their hands on your money. It's just Bitcoin is basically freedom when it comes to money.
And I think that'll help offset some additional currencies
we're
that come in.
talking about so many. We are in the Great Awakening, right? We are in the greatest times since the birth of Christ, right? We're talking about such things that we weren't allowed to talk about 2 decades ago, right? We weren't allowed to talk about alternative currencies 2 decades. I went to a graduate school, business school on the East Coast, and we had it pounded into our head. You pray to the Fed, and here we are talking about all these things.
Well, the Federal Reserve's not even a government agency, and they're creating all these regulations that keep us from money. Okay, the best way to explain the importance of cryptocurrency is, remember in Canada when the truckers opposed the vaccine mandates, and then all their bank accounts got locked out. They were not able to pay for food. They paid their bills, their mortgage. With cryptocurrency, the government can't do that. They can't just lock you out because you don't subscribe to whatever their globalist agenda of the day is. You have the ability to still have access to your money and not get it confiscated.
All right. More on these ground-breaking, ground-shaking events. New York Times put out an article talking about the vulnerabilities of the IRS today. So President Trump has gutted that gutted that department. 38,000 agents gone. And now the word is they no longer have an enforcement arm. The New York Times is printing articles talking about the vulnerabilities of the IRS. People are asking their companies to quit withholding taxes, and Trump is trial ballooning the idea of getting rid of the IRS. All of these things line up in one direction, which is at the same time we see this war on property taxes. This is incredible, momentous times.
So yeah, I mean, when you look at people getting rid of the IRS and getting rid of income tax and going to consumption tax, when you look at the property tax going away, when you look at President Trump saying, look, we need to put a moratorium on credit card interest rate and cap it at 10% for at least a year to get people to catch up. Donald Trump is working on the economy. He's working on putting more money into the American families' pockets. And I think this year, 2026, is going to be a banner year for the American public. Obviously, President Trump had to take over a horrible economy that was just an absolute dumpster fire from the 4 years of the Biden administration. And the economy is like an aircraft carrier. It's not like a speedboat. It takes a little bit of time to change and maneuver. And so Donald Trump put his policies into place for 2025 so that they would, we'd see our gains in 2026.
What do you guys think about the fair tax? I mean, it's been pushed since 1999. There's not a lot of bipartisan support, but it sounds like a good alternative. You're getting rid of the IRS, you're getting rid of income tax, or you're just paying tax on things you buy. No property tax. You buy it once, you own it. And one of the counter arguments is it hurts lower income families, but then they get a rebate.
Right.
What do you guys know about that, or what do you think about it?
So, I mean, the people that's going to hit the hardest are the people that buy Lamborghinis and that buy, Ferraris and buy super yachts and things like that, because obviously they're going to be paying a lot more, and that's going to go into our coffers. I think having carve-outs for milk, bread, cheese, things like that wouldn't affect lower income, people. We have that kind of same thing. No tax on during back to school, right? So parents get to take advantage of that for their school supplies for their children. So I'd like to see special carve out for that. But yeah, I think the fair tax and consumption tax is going to be the way to go. Now I want to make sure that we stay away from like the European value added tax because that is a tax at every level of production. And so it's kind of sneaky that you're taxed on the aluminum, and then there's a tax on the CNC machine that makes whatever product out of the aluminum, and then it's taxed on the painter that paints the end item, and then finally the taxed on the wrapping that the packaging goes in, and then finally to the consumer. So that value-added tax I don't think is a good idea, but I think the consumption taxes and fair tax is the way to go.
Yeah, I'm definitely against the VAT tax.
Well, I'll bring up one subject, the Federal Reserve. So the whole concept of the Federal Reserve, it was created by the banker class with the purposes of debt enslaving us, killing us with debt. It's a debt-based currency. That entire idea is corrupt in itself. And essentially what the goal was create a debt-based currency and then create a bloated government that's funded by a debt-based currency, and then they kill us all with debt. And what President Trump is doing is he's slashing and burning the federal government, which, is taking away that albatross. And then at the same time, he's distributing, he's keeping, of course, there will still be functions of the federal government, but a lot of things will be distributed to the states, which means a distributed system, a decentralized system, which means a system that's less corruptible. It's just overall better. And with that idea in place, we see all these threats to the Fed, all these alternative currencies. And what I'm trying to say is I believe Trump is setting the stage. It was 1912, the globalists, they put in the income tax with Woodrow Wilson. Then 1913, they put in the Federal Reserve, something like that. And I think Trump is setting the stage to take both of those leftist weapons out. That's what I think he's doing.
So again, Nick, I love Nick's analogies, playing 5D chess. We are seeing, an amazing administration that what he's doing. In fact, I was invited by CPAC to Mar-a-Lago, and I was sitting next to one of the board members, and he was Trump's pollster. And I made the comment that it almost, and please don't leave a bunch of hate comments, but it almost seems as though Donald Trump not having successive terms was actually good for the country because he was able to get a team in place that was going to absolutely catapult our country forward and to all the things that you just said. And he said to me in confidence, he said, Donald Trump would agree with you on that the team that he has in place is going to do just that.
He's got a superstar team. I love what Pete Hegseth is doing. There's so much criticism on him, but as a combat veteran, I wish I had a Secretary of War at that time when I was serving. I mean, look what he's doing. Look what he's done. Look at these operations that don't get leaked out. Look what we did to Iran, and look what we just did to Venezuela. He was in Texas yesterday at the SpaceX facility with Elon, and I think they're working on us making sure that we dominate space as the next battleground. And we're not talking about just spaceships. We're talking about everything. We're talking about cybersecurity. We're talking about satellites, communications. Remember in World War II when we dominated the skies? Now we're going to dominate the space and everything above that too.
So we've talked about our economy and how it needs to be protected and the ongoings there. But there was a term that was thrown out in the conversation earlier, which is digital dome. Can someone explain to me what is the digital dome?
Yeah, so it's a term that I feel I helped coin. I mean, obviously we have the Iron Dome, which is the Israeli missile defense and rocket defense shield. We're grabbing technology from that to go into our golden dome, and just makes sense to talk about the digital dome. And that's artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, quantum computing, robotics, and then all of the energy to power all of that. Now, artificial intelligence, everybody here, nobody's been living under a rock. We know what AI is. But the thing is we have to make sure that we control it at the national level. We need to have what I like to call in the Army calls a unity of effort. If we have 50 different regulations in 50 different states, we're going to lose the AI race. And we have to win it because our adversaries don't have the same values that the United States has. China is going to weaponize AI without safety systems. We know this is going to happen. Russia is going to do the same thing. So we have to make sure that we have the controlling AI. Now, quantum computing is super cool. It's going to be obviously the future. It's going to make new drugs possible. It's going to help with oil and gas exploration. It's going to be able to make sure that AI is powered. Now, quantum computing is, if you are familiar with traditional computing systems, are binary. There's a 1 and there's a 0. Well, in quantum computing, the qubits can be 1, 0, or both at the same time. And so that allows just an exponential amount of computing power. So if you had a bunch of drawers and you hid a ping pong ball in 100 drawers and it's just in one, a normal computer right now would go open drawer by drawer in order to find the ping pong ball. In quantum computing, it would open all 100 drawers at the same time to find the ping pong ball. And so you can imagine just the exponential computing power that's going to happen there. Now, robotics, the future of the military is going to be drone warfare. We see that has been an earthquake that has happened in Ukraine, that drones are controlling the battlefield. And one of the things I think is super important is that the defense industry is, after years and decades of consolidation, and so you have Boeing and McDonnell Douglas and Northrop Grumman and things like that, you're starting to see companies like Anduril with Palmer Luckey, who was the inventor of Oculus Rift and sold that to Meta, and he's now started a defense contracting company. And they're able to rapidly advance prototypes and to make sure that we have that cutting edge technology that, again, a company like Boeing, a legacy company, is going to take years and years to have that technology. So the fact that we're having smaller companies that are able to be very nimble and do land, sea, and air systems is going to be critical. Now, when we talk about to power, I'm an oil and gas guy. We need to make sure that we have LNG, that it's surplus, being able to sell that to countries. We need to make sure that we develop our Texas industry, since I am running to represent Texas. But also some of the technologies such as smaller nuclear reactors that are being developed for the U.S. Army to be able to set up in 4 operating bases and to have energy production and to be cooled by solid salt. Bill Gates is really heavily involved in that. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be perfect for these large data centers that are really energy intensive, that we look at the AI being able to be powered, but also to make sure that all of our critical infrastructure is powered. So all of that is just encompassed in the digital dome. And we need to have a next generation leader in Congress that understands the technology and can be an over the horizon viewer of that technology and anticipate it. And I believe I'm that person for CD38.
I mean, like, you bring up so many things that just raise ideas in my head. One of the things I want to say is that, one of the things Nick said, he said we are one of the only countries that gets taxed to send our money overseas. So I know a big part of Nick's platform is to ensure that we don't, with Venezuela, that it doesn't become the Ukraine where we're actually funding an entire country. But when you talk about infrastructure and all these technologies that are coming, I think about the fact that if we are able to stop that exodus of our money to all these wasteful programs, to these foreign countries, and invest it back into our own country. In our own country, we have shortages of water. We have crumbling infrastructure. We have, beautiful buildings that we can't renovate because we don't have the funds. And I just think that you were talking about the infrastructure that will come with quantum computing AI and all of that. I just think that if we stop that exodus of money, we can put it back into our country and have everything that we need here in this country.
So I'm going to push back a little bit on that. I think one, if I just could disagree with anything of the Trump administration has done, and it's the cancellation of USAID. USAID used properly would have been a great benefit. The problem with USAID is that the Obama administration and the Biden administration abused it. What they were doing is they were going to African countries and saying, look, we'll give you $10 billion if you make a constitutional change that allows for gay marriage. That's not in the interest of the United States. Who cares? That's not in the interest of the United States. They'd go to another African country. We'll give you $20 billion if you change your constitution to allow 20% females in your legislature. We can't even do that in the United States, right? And we're saying we're going to do that. So that is not in the best interest of our country. What we should have done is we will give you $10 billion, but we want access and permissions to your airspace, to your land space, whenever we need it, and we want mineral rights for the next 100 years. And that way we're getting a return on our investment. We're making money on the investment. And that's something that I think we should have changed USAID to do in order to make money. Now, I agree, we need to make sure that we're fixing the infrastructure here. But if we were able to get an ROI on our investments rather than just stuff that does not matter to the United States strategically, I think we should have done that.
I think USAID was rotten to the core. And if I'm America first. I'm a nationalist, but I do agree that it's not about putting our head in the sand and not just looking outside. We should spend money overseas, but it has to directly tie to benefit Americans and America.
Agreed.
And I like what you said about if we're going to invest this money, we're not giving money away. If we're investing this money, then we need to benefit from it. Whether it's mineral rights, where it is strategic location for military or whatnot, but it has to directly benefit Americans.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, our farmlands are suffering right now. Our farmers and ranchers, they're losing money just to provide us food. That money needs to go to them to help. It's a matter of national security. If we're not able to provide food for our citizens and we have to import that food from somewhere else, that's a big problem.
Guys, we're in our last 4 minutes, so with these last couple of minutes, why don't you both just give a statement on your campaign and where people can learn more about you?
Yeah, so I'm Barrett McNabb. You can learn more about my campaign and my platform at barrettmcnabb.com. You can also follow me on Facebook at Barrett McNabb for Texas. And I tell you what, the momentum is building for the McNabb campaign in CD38. My domination of the candidate forum that occurred on December 18th and the candidate forum that occurred today with the Greater Houston Pachyderm Club, the momentum is unmistakable. And I cannot wait to represent CD38 in Congress and be Texas First, America always.
Yeah, I watch you, Barrett, from afar and admire everything you're doing. You and I had coffee one day and you decide, hey, where do we have the coffee? And the only place we decided on was Black Rifle Coffee, and that was America's Coffee. You got my backing. 2 combat veterans going to Congress. We're going to flush out the squad and call us the X-Men because we're both Generation Xers. My campaign has gained tremendous amount of momentum, especially after my post on Facebook that went viral. The one talked then about immigration and how it is required. You have to assimilate if you come to the United States and to be an American. That got over 1.2 million views and just blew up my account. And the momentum is growing, getting endorsements and recommendations from the Montgomery County Tea Party PAC, from True Texas Project. And most of none of my endorsements come from career politicians. It comes from the people. It comes from patriots. It comes from patriots like Allen West, warfighters, and Veterans for America First, because I want to represent the people, my career politicians, when I get into Congress.
Great.
So check out my Facebook page. It's Nick Tran for Congress.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, both. Really appreciate your
Absolutely.
time. It's been a great
Thank you,
hour.
Chris.
We've really covered a whole host of things that are happening in the world right now. It's an incredible time.
Goes fast, doesn't it?
It does go fast, and
Yeah.
I'd love to come back sometime.
Yeah, we would love to have you back. That'd be great, both of you. And this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. Have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday with one more hot topic.